Okay, raise the camera, maybe not. What am I doing? Ah! Okay, maybe this is good, maybe not. We'll see. Okay, we are not going to address how tragic my bangs look right now. So, we're just gonna have to deal with it, guys. This is my pep talk to myself. Okay. Hi everyone! Sorry for missing an upload last week, but in case you missed my community channel post, I started a new job. So I did take the week to kind of get more acclimated to this new routine. Anyways, I know my last video was about Vocaloid, but today I wanted to talk to you all about another one of my favorite Japanese franchises that kind of is based around fictional musicians and idols, Uta no Prince-sama. I promise you guys, I am multidimensional and I do have other interests, but some reason this is just on the forefront of my mind this month, I guess. Now, there is a big variety of Japanese idol anime and other media, and I would argue that as Asian music like J-pop and K-pop have become more popular globally, the amount of idol-based media has probably increased both in quantity and popularity. However, I want to bring us back to the early 2010s. In fact, as I was researching for this video, this anime was ahead of its time, and I would go as far as to say it changed the game for idol anime. Of course, I am still talking about Uta no Prince-sama. So a little background about Uta no Prince-sama. Up until now, I've kind of been referring to it as an anime, but it's actually a multimedia franchise, and it started out as a video game. The first game was titled Uta no Prince-sama, and it was originally released for the PSP or PlayStation Portable in 2010. As for the gameplay, the original game is a visual romance novel. It's basically an otome game where you play as the main character. You can go down different routes for different characters, and it was a story that had multiple endings and multiple paths. There are also a variety of mini games that you would play throughout the game that like accompanied it and would affect your outcome. And I'll get a little bit more into the actual plot a little bit later in this video. The original game itself was pretty popular. It was popular enough to quickly have multiple sequels to the game. Within the first 5 years of the initial game release, the franchise released 5 more main story games, so 6 main story games in total. Also, as of now, there have been around like 5 or 6 spin-off games that are primarily rhythm games, but that's also been out with the franchise. So a big, robust amount of games for this franchise. During this time, the franchise grew outside of just the games. Obviously, as I have already suggested in this video, it was also adapted into an anime. The anime pretty much follows the main storyline of the game as far as I am aware. The first season of the anime was released in 2011 and it's called Uta no Prince-sama Maji Love 1000%. This is basically a reverse harem following the main character Haruka Nanami and her adventures learning about and bonding with the cast of handsome boys. Okay, so the plot. Haruka is like a small town girl who dreams of composing and creating music that touches the hearts of people. Her main inspiration growing up was an idol named Hayato, and to accomplish this dream, she registers to study at Saotome Academy, which is basically a school built to train and debut idols and composers. In this academy, they have idol students and composer students. They want every idol student to pair with a composer student, like 1-to-1. However, as you may have guessed, there are multiple idols who want to have Haruka as their composer. In the first season, these boys consist of
Itoki Otoya, Ichinose Tokiya, Hijirikawa Masato, Jinguji Rin, Kino Mao Natsuki, that one, truly could have butchered, and Kurususho.
Of course, they all have their own stories and problems they need to work through with the support of Haruka and each other. Heart, yay friendship. Their backstories are a bit different when adapted from the game to the anime, but here's kind of a one-on-one on all the characters and their deals, TM. Otoya is an orphan who, long story short, has trauma and is afraid of losing the people and things he loves. He's generally positive and cheery, but as stated, is trying to hide his emotional scars. Masato is basically the tsundere, as he is pretty serious and stoic. This is because he is the heir to a big company, but he has been allowed to follow his passion for music for only 1 year. So basically, he's like trying to make the best of every moment, and he was one of my favorites, not to sound biased. Rin is actually kind of tied to Masato as they were childhood friends. His family also owns a big company, but he is the third son, so he is not like the heir. His personality is pretty flirtatious and wild. He lost his mother, who was a famous idol, and that's basically what has drawn him to music. Natsuki has kind of a wild character point, but before we get into that, his personality, he's basically tall and lovable. He likes cute things and is a little bit childish. He has glasses, but when his glasses come off, he becomes Satsuki, who's like a dark alter ego. It's basically presented as a coping mechanism that Natsuki has created to protect himself, but in later seasons, they like work to make them become one whole again. Sho is like the opposite of Natsuki. While Natsuki is like the tall guy who is loving and caring and like likes cute things, Sho is short, but he wants to be like so manly and is like a little bit daring. They're actually childhood best friends, so another kind of pairing. In the game, he has a heart condition, but he wants to be like a big action star and do a lot of stunts and stuff. Last but not least is Tokiya. I saved him for the last because in my opinion, he seems like the true ending. Like that might sound bad or biased, but Ultimate game players most likely know what I'm talking about. Like there's always one character option that always feels a little bit like more in line with the overall story. Like you can kind of see like, oh, this might be like the true ending. Anyways, Tokiya comes off as serious and cold, but as the story goes on, he drops down his walls a little. He's very sweet. So basically another tsundere with blue hair, so you can tell that the show is feeding me. So Tokiya is like dark and mysterious, but hey, you know what's weird? He somehow looks exactly the same as Hayato, you know, Haruka's inspiration. He says that they're actually twin brothers and he gets like really defensive over it, but surprise, they're not twin brothers, they are the same person. So anyways, Tokiya got tired of being Hayato because the job just was not it anymore. They like did not want him to sing, you know, idol stuff. So he decided he wanted to try to get a new start at the Sotome Academy. They basically all end up deciding to create an idol group named Starish with Haruka as the composer. And that's basically how the first season ends. This anime has 4 whole seasons and it comes with a lot more plot and characters. I don't really think I have the time to dive all the way into the entire plot of Utono Prince Sama. If that's something you guys want, if you want to hear my abridged version of what it is, feel free to let me know and maybe I'll make a video about it. But I'm going to talk about the important things that happen in the subsequent seasons. The first is that there is a new member to join Starish. It rounds out the name Starish. If you have not guessed, the letters of Starish stand for the names of the characters, though it's kind of inconsistent if it's their first name or last name. Like you can tell there's a little bit of a reach going on, but the A is accounted for with Ajima Cecil. I don't really know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. So Cecil actually was kind of in the first season. He's actually this cat that we see take care of Haruka in the first season. And he's actually a prince of a foreign country that was cursed to be a cat. I know this sounds like a fever dream, and I don't really know why that's his story, like why it went so outlandish. But anyways, he was a cat, he is a prince, he joins this singing group because love is magic. We are also introduced to other idol groups. As they graduate from being students to joining their master course, they get mentored by another group from Shining Agency, Quartet Night. This is an established big idol group whose 4 members go and become individual mentors for the members of Starish. Again, they all have their own personalities and sad backstories you can go through and find out and help. Another group we meet is Heavens, which is the rival idol group from a rival agency that like Starish competes against. Again, this was a pretty rudimentarily, quickly abridged 101 on the Utano Prince Sama lore. So if it sounds cool, like you can go and figure out more on your own, but that was a pretty dry, bam, 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 here are the facts of the plot. So the anime is probably the most notable media from this franchise on a global scale, but there is other adaptations like manga, music albums, other movies, and even live action shows and events and live concerts like held in Japan. There's a lot going on for this franchise. There's a chance that you probably have already heard of or know of Utano Prince Sama. I feel like the popularity of this franchise is kind of hard for me to gauge, I'm not gonna lie. When the anime came out, I felt like it made waves. My perception may have been skewed based on my personal algorithms and whatnot, but this anime came out in a time where a lot of anime could become pretty popular because there was not too much oversaturation in the market as I kind of feel like there is now. In other words, I feel like I saw a lot of fan interactions with this anime, either with fan edits or people cosplaying or doing dance covers to the song, or a lot of Tumblr blogs and Tumblr posts about this. So yeah, etc. I think there were a lot of factors that helped make this franchise so big. First of all, the character designs and the art style are great, and I think they're particularly attractive if you are thinking about like the late 2000s, like comparatively, like as far as art style goes. I think it's safe to say that we all have a soft spot for pretty boys. Additionally, I think it had a pretty great cast for the voice actors. Even the first game had a theme song sung by V. Mamoru Miyano. He returns as Tokia in the anime, as well as having a lot of other talented VAs that could both sing and act. Also, as I mentioned at the start of this video, I do think that this did something that had never really been done before. I was looking online to see the various idol anime and franchises that were out, as well as their release dates, and Utano Prince Sama is pretty early on that list. This is not to take away from the ones that came out before them, so I don't want to pretend like they're the first idol anime, because they're not. However, art style wise, Utano Prince Sama was one of the first modern anime around this premise. More importantly, Utano Prince Sama is one of the first idol anime that focuses on like male idols. Again, there may have been some really old anime from the 90s that had male idols that maybe I overlooked, so I can't say that it's like the first, but it's definitely really close to being one of the first. Not to make any generalizations about people and fans, but I do think that this helped it reach an untapped audience that maybe had never gotten into this genre before. Being a multimedia franchise also helped with its popularity because the places in which it occupied grew greatly. For example, not only could it be your favorite game or your favorite anime, but you could also buy the songs from the franchise and listen to them as if they were an actual group. You could play the rhythm games to these songs or go to live concerts. There are also a lot of more modern anime that I feel like are very similar to this. Off the top of my head, anime like Idolish 7 or Star Mew, and honestly, I went through Crunchyroll and there's a bunch that I don't even have time to name, but it's crazy to think about how some of these anime were released literally like 10 years after Utapri. Like, they were trendsetters. Am I right? All of this being said, I feel like Utano Prince Sama isn't really talked about much anymore. Now, of course, I do realize that this is like an older franchise and that's just bound to happen with time. However, I feel like it's proportionally not known or talked about enough. And I promise that this is not going to be like the thesis for every single one of my videos I make, because I'm not gonna lie, I'm writing this script and I'm like, oh no, do I only have one opinion, which is that everything should be popular? So Okay, I took a hot moment to reflect, but I still stand by what I said. Again, I know that sometimes things that were very important to me are quite regularly not as important to other people's childhood and development. And I do recognize that this is an older franchise. However, I still feel like something's off. Did you know that as recently as 2017, Uchi no Prince Sama was the 13th most selling franchise in Japan? Yes, Japan. You know, like the country with arguably the most popular franchises. 2017 is also pretty late considering that the games were released in 2010 and the final season of the anime ended in 2016. I would even say that by the 4th season of the anime, for me, it didn't have as much hype around it as it did with the first couple of seasons. But maybe that's just me. Basically, I'm trying to say that it ranked 13th even when I feel like it was near not the peak of it. You get what I'm saying? I'm so tired. Again, I'm not expecting it to be the #1 franchise in 2024, but I feel like for something that was that big, we would just see it a bit more, even being mentioned, you know what I mean? Even if it's for nostalgia bait or just kind of in passing, I don't really hear about Uchi no Prince Sama at all. Additionally, a remastered version of the first game was released for the Nintendo Switch in 2019, and they released a new mobile game that literally came out this summer, 2 months ago in Japan. So it's not like this is a completely abandoned franchise. You know what I mean? I know that the genre and gameplay and the story of these two games are completely different and it's not a one-to-one comparison, but if you look at a game like Dangonronpa, a Japanese visual novel franchise released on the PSP in 2010. Almost daily, I see Dangonronpa cosplay or people talking about this game. Again, I know the actual content of the two franchises are different. So of course, there are probably a lot of other factors as to why this might be, you know, including the fan base or type of story, etc. And as a fellow Danganronpa player and lover, I'm glad that this game continues to live on. However, I just wanted to show you this as an example that utapri could, in theory, still be as popular. The odds are not completely against it, right? So why do I feel like this franchise has become so obscure? Well, maybe I should clarify. Uchi no Prince Sama is obscure here in the West, or at least in America. I do not live in Japan, nor do I really have a personal way to get in touch and find a primary source of someone who does live in Japan, but it seems like utapri is still relatively relevant there. When I go online, there are still new games and CDs and tours that are upcoming. However, I personally feel like this has become a franchise that I physically cannot engage with anymore, and that does make me a little sad. Now, I say all of this knowing fully well that I am not entitled to this franchise being accessible to me. I do mean all of this lightheartedly, and I fully respect that this is not something that needs to be accessible to us in the US or other countries. However, I can still kind of be upset. Uchi no Prince Sama was one of my first animes, and it was pretty formative for me. I have a lot of fond memories with it. I also know that I would love all the other media that this franchise has to offer, like the visual novels, rhythm games, listening to the music. I know I would love it so much it hurts. The truth is, other than the anime, which had English subtitles available, there's not really any other way that English speakers can engage with any of this media. And I'm so sad to say that when I checked Crunchyroll, which is where I originally watched the anime when I was 11, it's not even available to watch there anymore. It's not on Crunchyroll. That's crazy. All the games that have been released have never been localized into English. Even the 2019 remastered version for the Nintendo Switch is only in Japanese, and it's only available on the Japanese game store. I do think that there are fan translations online for some of the games out there, but all of those are unofficial, and I personally don't really find that it's like worth it. Now, I don't know if the games are like region locked, like the 3DSs are, for example. Like if I were to buy the original PSP game and insert it into my hypothetical PSP, because I don't have one, I may still be able to like physically run and play the game, but that doesn't help me because I still do not know Japanese. Low-key, I'm making it my life goal to learn Japanese and to be more comfortable reading kanji just to play the utapri games. Like, that's something I need to do in my life. So not only are none of these games translated, nor do I think they ever plan to be, but as I mentioned, the anime is also harder to find and watch officially. I mean, I'm not gonna stop anyone if they want to like sail the digital seas, if you know what I mean, but still. Their newest mobile game, which as I mentioned, opened in Japan, there's no news about the potential creation of a global server, so that might not come back to America. Also, I don't have access to like the majority of their songs. When I go to Spotify, the majority of Utano Prince Sama songs are grayed out, and they say that they are not available to me in the US. Now, I don't know if it's just select countries that don't have access to it, or if it's blocked everywhere but Japan, but it still makes me so sad because I didn't really touch on the music part, but as you could assume, it's an idol anime. They do have music. So yeah, like I can't really listen to the songs that they made for this franchise. Moral of the story, I just wanted to talk to you guys about a franchise that played such a big role in my life and the development of my brain chemistry, and that it is currently being gatekept by Japan from the rest of the world. As I mentioned before, this video is all in good fun. Even if it does make me a little sad, I'm sure that the franchise is doing well enough in Japan only, so the company may not want to spend time and effort and money to make their products more global, you know what I mean? I'm not a part of their business or marketing team, so maybe they have run the numbers and they just don't think it's worth trying to translate their games or unblock their music. I truly have no clue, but I'm sure it seems like it's working for them. I just wish I could have more access to it. All I can really say is that I wished that it could be a little bit more accessible to us foreign fans, and I will be holding out hope that maybe one day, even though very unlikely, I could play the games and listen to all the music. And I also think that they would find global success if the game was more open. I know they'd at least get money from me. But for now, I'll stick to just hopefully learning Japanese just to play the visual novels in the next 70 years. So yeah. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you were a fan of utapri, or just your thoughts on all of this. If for some reason you live in Japan and are more in touch with their pop culture there, please let me know if utapri is still popular there, or what extent it is. And if it is, just know that I am envious and I just want to play the visual novels, guys. So please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Or maybe not. Bye.